Welcome everyone to the Hard Talk HR webinar in association with Niamo. And now the topic for today's webinar is long tail HR operations, how HR leaders can add value in scattered locations. And we're going to be doing this in association with Vivek Khanna, who's an HRO expert from Niamo. So just before we get started with the webinar, I'd like to run through a couple of small things. So obviously today's webinar will be brought to you by Niamo, and they're one of our client partners of the HR Congress. So in association with them, we'd like to welcome everyone here today, and hopefully you'll get something valuable out of the presentation. So the webinar focus for today, there are three sort of main points we're going to go across. The first is covering the current challenges in long tail HR. And then we're going to go through 5 long-tail HR strategies that should help you in effectively managing talent in small countries. And then finally, we're going to look at more of a speculative question, which is the future of HR, how technology will enable a seamless long-tail experience. So how to interact today. As you can see on your screens in front of you, we have on the left-hand side, we have a little audio box there. So please write your questions and answers in the box provided to that side. If you have any problems or any issues throughout the webinar, please write to them. I will be trying to answer as many as questions and comments as possible, but please be aware it's a little difficult for me to answer all of your questions at once while presenting or facilitating, but we will try and do that. So at the conclusion of the presentation, we'll have a 10 to 15 minute question and answer session where you can pose questions to Vivek and he can address those. So please write those questions in the comment box and we will take note of them and then supply him with those questions. So before we go any further today, I'd just like to announce that the HR Congress is only a couple of weeks away. It's the 28th and 29th of November in the Egg, Brussels. Along with people such as Herminia Ibarra and Dave Ulrich, we've got a great lineup of speakers. So please, if you're interested in coming along to the HR Congress, there's a 20% discount available for all webinar attendees. All you have to use is the coupon code webinar at the registration page. We'd love to see you there, so please come along. It'll be a fantastic event. And of course, you'll get to meet Vivek and Niamo on site there if you're interested in talking to them further. So without further ado, I'd just like to present you Vivek Khanna. He's the Chief Client Partner at Niamo, an HRO expert with over 25 years of business development experience, serves in an advisory role for many HR forums and associations, and is a frequent speaker in conferences and is a past chair of the NAPBS GAC. Vivek will be presenting a session in the HR transformation module at the HR Congress. So come along to Brussels and you'll meet him in person there. So before, I'd just like to hand the presentation over to Vivek. So please bear in mind, just a couple of seconds. And we'll be going. Vivek, you should be ready to go now. So please start your screen, and here we go.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much. Am I audible here, Ben?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. Excellent. Wonderful. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, depending on where you are logging in. I'm logging in from California. I'm sure there are people from Europe, so good afternoon and early good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today, joining me actually for this webinar, where we are going to be talking about what we call as the long tail HR revolution. Basically, during this session, I will talk to you about what do we mean by long tail, how did we discover about long tail, and how do we look at long tail, how do I look at long tail, how do I see HR challenges. We will have interactive polls and discussions. And then I will talk about strategies that you all can adopt in order to mitigate the challenges and create a better experience for all of your employee associates. So let me take you back to a telephone conversation that I had once with a client. And the client called me and my thing was, "Hi, I'm from Niamo and how can I help you?" And the client came back and said, "I've got 6 employees in Angola, 15 in Bahrain, 35 in Burkina Faso, 90 in Austria. Can you help me? I need help in managing the HR and payroll for all of these distributed employees." So let's do a quick poll. How many of you in the room are multinationals and may have something similar in place? So Ben, the first poll, please.
I've selected the poll, so we're just going to wait for people to finish voting. We're at 55%. We'll give it a couple more seconds. And I think we'll close the poll. So we have 81% are multinational and 19% are not multinational.
Okay, wonderful, excellent. So great to see all of you who are multinationals, because this will bring very close to the people who are multinationals. On the other hand, there are people who are from even a single country may relate to this if you have scattered locations even within the country. So, you know, I'm from the United States, and as all of us know, United States is like 50 countries in one, and you could have people in different parts of the country across different time zones, and you could be facing a very similar issue. So hang on for the ride, and let's go forward with what we think are the requirements and what creates a long tail. So we've all heard of the Googles of the world, right? 72,000 employees, 28,000 international employees, 50 plus countries. But then on the other hand, you also have companies like Verifone, which are only 6,000 employees, 5,500 employees, but 4,000 of them are international for them. Their main location being US, the rest being international. And then they are, with the 4,000 employees, they are in 42 countries. So while you have the Walmarts of the world and the BPs with larger employee population, a multinational not necessarily needs to be these large employee population. Though in each one of these scenarios, you will see that while they have a large employee base overall, for example, Walmart, 2.3 million employees globally, but only 0.8 of them are outside their core base, which is United States. And that 0.8 are still spread over 26 countries. So that's how we look at the distribution. So if you look at your company and you put all of the countries that you're present in on the x-axis and the number of employees by country on the y-axis, you will see typically most companies distribute this way. They'll have large number of employees in their main base or home country. Then in some of the secondary relations where either they have manufacturing facilities or large service facilities or distribution facilities, they'll have a larger population. And then they'll have a base of sales, distribution, service, all across the globe, right? And that's the red area is what we call as the long tail. Because most of the companies would have, and I would assume so, fairly mature processes when it will come to their main locations. That's their primary countries, and of course on their secondary countries as well. Now, when we look at the population and we look at it from a real life perspective, let's look at some examples. This is a company. Again, I am giving you examples of companies that are in our client list today that we have dealt with. 35% of the employees are in the home country, one country. 75% of their employees are in the balance. If you take all the total population, 75% will be in the 10% countries, the extra, the secondary lot. And then they have 25% of their population, leaving the 75, which is in the primary and the secondary country, or distributed in about 90 countries. And here, for this company, the primary country is actually in Europe. The next example is where the primary country is actually in United States, and the balance of them, their long tail, is in other parts of the world, primarily more in Europe, Africa, and Asia. And then on the flip side, you have multinationals that come across from other nations. So for example, from Asia, they could have a large population in their base country like India or China. And for them, the European nations end up being in the long tail, or US in many cases is part of the long tail because they have a small sales population or service population or a development center in the United States, but their main manufacturing facilities and rest base countries. So long tail does not necessarily mean that your base country is in the developed nation and the long tail is the developing nations. It could be converse as well. It is entirely got to do with the spread and the number of employees that you have. So now that we have defined what the long tail is, and fortunately for us, 81% of you are multinationals, and I'm guessing you are in one of these examples. Let's go to the next opinion poll that we have from you all to understand, when you look at your long tail of employees, your long tail, the demographics, what are your biggest HR challenges? So Ben, the next poll.
Yep, we're onto it. We have around 40% of people have voted, so just waiting on the remainders to fill out the voting.
Oh, that's quick.
People are quite quick around here.
Yep. People seem to have made up their mind very quickly. They know exactly what their challenges are.
So give it another 10 seconds. We've got 57% of voters, so we'll push this up to about 80 if we can. Okay, I think we've hit a little bit of an impasse, so I think we'll close the poll. So the poll has been closed, and the result is that 40% is regulatory and payroll, 10% technology, and 50% people.
I'm sorry, what was the last one?
50% people.
50% people. So people being, I'm guessing, is the biggest challenge, followed by regulatory and payroll, and then last but not least is technology.
Correct.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Ben. So let's look at your challenges in each of its areas, and we will talk about them. People, you're absolutely right. The biggest challenge with distributed locations is how do you deliver HR services? How do you manage this talent, right? When you look at your core country, it is possible for you to have the right HR resources, your ability to recruit, your ability to train, your ability to develop this talent and retain the talent is so much more easier because you can have good employee engagement. And distributed population across multiple time zones, more specifically when the person sitting in a time zone is far deprived, right? It's on the opposite side of the clock. So now having the right kind of HR structure, HR processes, the maturity that you might have in your primary country, how do you deploy it for these scattered locations? Of course, along with the scattered locations comes this whole aura of regulatory and payroll, paying people in time, making sure that you're paying them correctly, because the laws in every nation, when it comes to taxes, the various benefit plans, the various compensation structures can be so much more different. And on top of that, as we all know, the governments in every nation have the right to change their mind every now and then based on their situation, and they keep making these frequent changes. So how do you keep up to date with all of these frequent changes and the different complexities? And the worst part is, because you have a small number of employees, the cost of managing this compliance, as well as being able to deliver accurate payroll, just seems to skyrocket. So how do you do this cost effectively, even though you might have a much smaller employee population, at the same time protecting yourself from the global corporate risk? So managing risk with cost becomes the biggest challenge when you look at regulatory and payroll, because if you have unlimited money, you can always hire the top 4 audit firms to take care of it for you. But then it becomes very costly in terms of the number comes to technology, I know 10% of you, because I'm guessing a lot of you have already taken your jump and jumped on the SaaS software. If you have, now you may have a cloud software available. The issue a lot of companies face when it comes to from a technology perspective, that the technology may not have caught up to the localization needs of each of these different countries, both from a data perspective, as well as maybe from a cultural perspective on what works. Very frequently, when it comes to, for example, for recruiting, different parts of the world may have different ways of how the recruitment process might work. In some countries, it is preferable to have a panel interview. That's what is culturally accepted. In others, it could be iterative interviews. And how do you, for example, keep your ATS up to track these kind of different scenarios? And inevitably, what happens is, because of lack of knowledge, most of the people tend to look at whatever is the process in their primary country. They use the same process in the secondary or in the long tail countries. And that leads to certain amount of conflict between the population and people not understanding. And that leads to lower engagement and then to retention. So here I have a chart for you where we have tried to look at each of the different processes in a long tail construct and looked at the level of difficulty in servicing it. So for example, if you look at data management, it's relatively easier, right? You can create the data construct as long as your software allows you to localize it. 80 to 90% of your data is similar. The rest of the data can come in. On the other hand, while data management is lower in being able to, in difficulty with servicing, payroll, on the other hand, could be very, very difficult, because payroll is beyond what is internal to you, and you get affected by the local laws, the interpretation of those laws, so it becomes a more difficult task. Similarly, benefits, because you need to know what is applicable, what is customary, and what is required by law. Compensation is at the lower end. Recruiting, as you all talked about, getting the right people, and getting the people cost effectively could be very, very difficult. Learning is actually more towards the lower end. There is the cultural sensitivity part that you need to take care of. Performance and succession, global mobility, as you all know, again, one part which makes the long tail construct very difficult. Compliance, we've already spoken about. And then the HR help desk. Because you have scattered employee population, lower number of people, now creating a structure so that these different employees can get their answers or can get guidance becomes difficult, because now you have to manage time zones, you have to manage different policies, and you have to manage different languages. And if you don't have enough people, the cost becomes the big factor. So when we look at a backbone on creating a structure for delivering long tail HR services, I'm going to talk about certain strategies and certain aspects that you should look at. Number one, the first important part is, if you already have a global system of record, as I can see from your responses, technology is lower on your criteria, which means you are already in the cloud and you have one global system of record, whether it is in cloud or on an on-premise software, on an ERP. One of your biggest challenges is from a payroll perspective, and what you should be looking at is a global payroll platform, a true global payroll platform, which is one platform for all of the countries that you service, not multiple different platforms, because then again, there will be non-sync between the system of record and the global payroll platform. And preferably, the global payroll platform should come with its integrated time and attendance, because time or absence is one of the biggest contributors of data to global payroll besides the system of record. Next, a global HR help desk. And I spoke about this earlier as well. The global HR help desk has to have round-the-clock support with multiple languages. And you have to look at a construct which looks at standardizing the process of handling each of those tickets across these different locations. And I've spoken about the cost aspect, but we will dwell in the models to look at cost later. This is the basic construct of ensuring that if you're going to deliver a higher level of service to long tail employees, these are things that you will require. And last but not least is a framework for managing global HR compliance. We inevitably have a good format, both in terms of people and tracking when it comes to the main countries. And when you outsource some of these locations, or you have less employees and you may have just one HR person at a regional level, you are leaving it to hope to make sure that all of the activities that are required by law are being taken care of from a compliance perspective. It is very, very important to have a global software, a global framework that helps to ensure beyond hope and that the compliance and the risk for the company is being managed. Now, in order to deliver this kind of services, what are basically required that however you are accessing these services have to be based on a global network. Whether you are doing it internally, you will have to create your own global network. If you are using a partner, the partner should have a global delivery network. They cannot deliver it from one country. These services will need to be virtualized if they have to give you a positive business case. So as you can see, we are talking about contradictory requirements. You're looking at a very high level of service with multiple languages, strong technology, but at the same time looking at producing a positive business case, or at least a reasonable business case in terms of the cost that you pay for these services. So I spoke about the global payroll. And I'm going to talk about what we are terming as the hyperloop in long-tail HR from a global payroll perspective. The conventional thinking when it came to payroll is all about the fact that you used an ERP, and which was one single software with its own rules engine, and inevitably it has certain number of countries. The modern technologies has led to distributed computing with a very, very simplistic way where you have sophisticated applications. It's simplistic, but you have sophisticated application using incremental innovation and exponential, delivering all of these global payroll scenarios to you on one platform. So please remember, it has to be one platform, but with a distributed computing format. If you use multiple systems, inevitably, and all of you would have experienced this, if you are using different providers or you're using different softwares or systems, that it leads to integration issues, it leads to an inconsistency of processes. Move towards single platform, one way of working, one process across the globe. Different softwares lead to legacy technology upgrades. Look at the new softwares. Of course, we have one, we call it Pay and Com, which was, we often compare it to like Tesla is in comparison to the gas-powered engine. This platform was built on the cloud-first, world-first design framework, enabling us to deliver it on one platform. Because you have multiple processes, the older platform continues to be dependent on the people and the knowledge. The newer platforms that are out there, including ours, are more machine-driven. They leverage artificial intelligence, they leverage machine learning, they leverage single standardized processes. Of course, with the data elements could be different by country, but the way you work on the interface, the way you work on the software, the way the steps are, all are exactly the same across the globe. Of course, it is the dream that in days to come, we will all be able to shift to pay cycles. Today, companies look at standardized pay cycles, which are on monthly, weekly, bi-weekly. It is hoped that in days to come, we would be able to change to a process and mechanism where payroll could be on demand based on an employee's requirements, and it could change anything from people are talking about daily payroll all the way to paying once every quarter, depending on how the employee would prefer it. So we have looked at the constructs. We've talked about the global payroll. We've talked about the need for a help desk or an HR structure, and we have spoken about the compliance aspect. Now, if you have to deliver this to the long tail HR, now let's look at what could be the different solution models that could be adopted to deliver these services. So one is, of course, the internal HR organization. And in an internal HR organization, typically this is delivered through what is we call as the global in-country location or in-country partners, or you could have regional service centers, which are delivered from a regional location or could be driven globally but delivered locally. The internal system, because of, as we spoke earlier, because of the lack of scale, of course, extremely effective would be relatively costly. So companies that have high margins, can afford to spend more money, have leveraged, and there are many multinational organizations that have regional service centers that deliver services to the long tail. We have observed that even in those scenarios, the regional centers are not able to provide full coverage when it comes to the countries which may have 2 or 5 employees. They are much more effective on the primary and the secondary countries. Inevitably, these much smaller employee population, because of lack of scale, because of cost, tends to get a secondary or a tertiary treatment. Then, the next model that has come into being over the last few years is what either we call as the multi-process HRO, so the MPHRO, a commonly used term in our industry, or single process HRO approach. And this is the current model. Now, what we have observed that the multi-process HRO, inevitably for the current providers that are in the market, tends to be again driven by the home and the secondary countries, because those are the countries where even an outsourced provider is able to deliver value or deliver a business case. The contracts can become extremely complex, extremely long, and sometimes companies have looked at single process HROs where they might outsource maybe one process, background verification. They might outsource recruiting. They might outsource learning. Now, in order to ensure that all of these processes are delivered effectively, a lot of the HR outsourcing companies end up doing contracts where they are in an umbrella level. So we've very frequently seen this in payroll, that you may have an umbrella contractor or an aggregator in the market. There are quite a few of them who have been in play over the last, I guess, a decade or so. You have seen the growth of global payroll companies who are primarily aggregators. And at the end of the day, they do provide you contractual arrangements. But when it comes to the process and data flow, you're still dealing with the spaghetti of multiple vendors. And many a times the service levels depend on the vendor that may be ultimately servicing the contract, not the contractual entity. And what I'd like to direct your attention is to what we are calling as the long tail model. Now, in order to deliver the long tail model, what is most important that the provider or your partner, for them, long tail has to be the centerpiece of their strategy. They have to be structured in a fashion that they have the requisite scale across the globe to be able to deliver the services cost effectively. It needs to be looked at out of the box. It needs to be looked at from the fact that the service levels do not need to be compromised between what are in your current primary countries versus what you will provide for a long tail countries. Of course, it will require a kind of partnership between what would be in-house in your primary or secondary countries, combined with a partner that provides you a technology-driven solution that will deliver a high level of services, both from an HR perspective, payroll, benefits, compliance, all of it bundled together with an effective cost level for all of these countries. So your partner has to bring to you solutions that brings multiple languages, presence globally, as well as systems that are singular in nature, so that you can go towards a singular platform. So align with your single HRIS that you might have rolled out, whether it is your SuccessFactors or Workday or Oracle, or even your ERP platforms like SAP or PeopleSoft. The platform at the other end again has to be one, so that there is a one-to-one interchange, and you can then be rest assured that your singular system of record is most accurate at all points of time. So let's look at, if you look at these different models, what are the pillars of success to ensure that you, when you service long tail, you are successful? First, and I can't repeat enough, is technology. Ensure that you get yourself on the right technology platform that is singular in nature across the globe. It has to support the multiple languages, the multiple currencies, the different time zones, the different requirements that you have based on your country dispersion. Next, people and processes. It is very important for servicing long tail that you undertake the path of standardizing global processes, or actually, more importantly, harmonizing global processes. Standardization, as we all know, more implements the big brother that this is our way and everybody has to implement it, and it always leads to conflict. Harmonization, on the other hand, looks at bringing in inputs from all the stakeholders concerned, but working towards the aim of ensuring that the way you deliver the service becomes similar, if not same, across the globe. This, of course, leads to scale. Now you can leverage, cross-leverage talent across the locations when you're delivering these processes, and you can build scale into the entire operation, because now you're on a singular technology, you're having standardized processes. And last but not the least is, of course, when you look at all of these situations, and if you are looking at an outsourced partner, it is very important for the pricing to provide you a positive business case, but at the same time, your contracting ensure that you get the service level that you deserve in each of the countries that you are operating in. So again, repeating, technology, people and processes, and of course, backing that with a business case, because you can always deliver the first two if you spend a lot of money. I'm sure while we all in the HR would like to deliver the highest level of services, our CFOs would really appreciate if we took in pricing and contracting into consideration as well. Well, this brings me to the end of my presentation. Before we jump into the question hour part, we have a white paper, which talks more about what I presented. And this was co-authored with Everest Group. And it is available as a handout to all of the attendees. Ben, I understand these have been placed in the handout section.
Correct.
And
yeah.
The people can download it from that section.
Yes,
right?
yes, indeed.
Excellent. So, Ben, I'm ready to take questions.
Okay, wonderful. Well, first of all, thank you, Vivek, for the presentation. It was very informative, and I think there was a lot of detail in there, which I think many people will find interesting. So basically, I just want to open up the floor to the attendees for questions now. Please feel free to write some questions to Vivek in the question box on the GoToWebinar control panel. I will be sitting here waiting for the questions to come in. And in the meantime, if Vivek, do you have anything to add about the handout? I believe it's available on the control panel. If for some reason you can't access the file now, we will attach the file to the follow-up email that will be sent out to all registered attendees. Also, just a reminder from my side as well, while the questions are coming in, that this is recorded, so it'll be available to all attendees after the fact. Even if you've had to drop out for some reason and come back later, you'll be able to hear the full recording. So while we're waiting for questions to come in, that's available there.
Yeah, so the one thing that I would like to point out is that a lot of what I have spoken about, if you are coming to the HR Congress, we have a session with a client. This was very fun, with a very distributed population. Their CHRO, their former CHRO is coming along. The visionary who helped partner with us, and you can actually hear about an actual client that has gone through that transformation and the benefits they achieved by implementing a long-tail HR strategy. What were their challenges and what benefits they have achieved, and what were some of their internal change drivers, and how did they implement that. So I would highly encourage you to meet us at the Congress. Come to our session. I will be there on the booth as well. So if you have some questions that come to you later, or your colleagues come up with a question, please feel free to come up to me to us then, and I'd be happy to answer at that point of time.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions coming in now. So the first question I have here is from Jim Davis. Jim just wants a clarification. He says he's not sure about the service that you're offering. Is it technology? Is it HRO? Is it both? Either one? Could you clarify for Jim this, Vivek?
Jim, excellent question. Thank you so much. Actually, we provide the holistic solution. So depending on what your requirements are, as a company, we provide the holistic solution, which composes of all of the three pillars. We provide the technology, the platform, the people, the process, the service, and at a positive business case. So we provide you all of the three pillars as a part of a holistic solution.
And I have another question here from June. And June says, what is the smallest number of headcount you can support?
Well, actually, June, I have clients that have less than 10 employees. Typically, in a single country, we have situations where you have one employee or two employees in a country. For anything to make sense, overall, we would have to look at your overall solution and discuss with you the specifics. But it could range. I have customers today that have 20,000 employees that are distributed. So it's a very wide range. What brings to bear is our ability to scale across all of these situations.
Okay, wonderful. I have another question here coming in from Brian. Thank you for the question, Brian. He says, do you use the existing HCM a company may have, or do you typically require a change to your preferred system?
Great question, Brian. Thank you so much. No, we do not require you to change your HCM. Of course, if you have a driver, you want to migrate from an ERP to cloud-based, we have some very interesting offers along with the vendors who want to promote that, but there is no requirement. I have a number of customers that run on their legacy platforms, and we support them on their legacy platform. Of course, we bring into bear our overlay of technology onto that legacy platform from, for example, a help desk system, etc., that helps them achieve their goals.
Okay, wonderful. Do we have any further questions? I'll just wait on a couple more in case anyone's writing as we speak. Otherwise, if we have no further questions, it's probably a good time to just about wrap up proceedings here today. So again, on behalf of the HR Congress, I'd just like to thank Vivek and Niamo for partnering with us today and presenting this presentation. It was very informative, and I really hope that people managed to get something valuable out of it. So if you have any final words for the listeners, Vivek, I'd just like to give you the floor right now.
Thank you, Ben. Everybody, thank you for sparing your time and your afternoon with me. I hope I have struck a chord with you. And if you have any questions, as I said, would highly encourage you to come to the Congress. We look forward to seeing you there. If not, please reach out, download the white paper. If you have a question, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to answer them. It does not necessarily mean that we have to provide you the solution. My role over here is to help you, guide you towards what would be best for your particular scenario. Thank you very much, and everybody have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you, Vivek, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Just as a reminder, everything will be sent out to you with a follow-up email, so you'll get a link to the full webinar on demand so you can listen to it anytime. And of course, the handouts will also be made available to you there. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us on the email on your screen there, and we'll be happy to address that for you. So once again, thank you all for tuning in, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone who wishes to come to Brussels, come to the HR Congress, and I'll be happy to meet you there. So from behalf of the HR Congress, myself, Ben Churchhouse, and Vivek Khanna from Niamo, thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and a lovely weekend. Okay.